Just crazy that this is playoff time already for your league. But as crazy as a final week usually is, this was one of the lesser crazy ones that I've seen. Mainly because there was really just one team that needed to perform and essentially shut the playoff picture out. And that team is TBD. And TBD got the biggest win of their lives with a 20-point win over Team Living La Vida Yoda. We're about to talk about that, but first, just to recap what happened. Crucifier was that team that was just hungry for that spot. And yes, Crucifier did have more overall points than TBD. So if TBD did not perform this week, TBD was out, Crucifier was in, but that is not what happened. And shout out to Crucifier for getting the win over a bad team, but still, you put up a ton of points. To get more points, by the way, than TBD, to if TBD lost, put you in the spot. So Crucifier did everything they needed to do. We'll talk about that matchup as well. Keep in mind, TBD less points than Crucifier, and even more less points than Sons of Chaos, who finished 5-8. So a little bit of luck goes a long way. Pain Train and Team Glory Hole get the bye, as we knew would happen. So let's just briefly talk about the games that didn't matter as much. So let's talk about Team Glory Hole versus Team El Captain. Both teams were in the playoffs. Glory Hole had the bye secured, so they didn't need to win, and they did not. El Captain actually, technically, I guess, was alive for the bye if Pain Train had an awful week and El Captain had a massive week, and that's wrong. That is right. Because if Pain Train lost, they both would have been 8-5. Pain Train put up a lot of points this week, which basically shut the door, but there was a way for El Captain to actually grab that bye. El Captain did what they had to do in a 170-145 win. El Captain going into the playoffs, of course, expecting good performances from Jonathan Taylor moving forward. Connor adding value. Van Jefferson, a really big piece. And T. Higgins, my goodness. Was I wrong about T. Higgins? Continuing to perform well. Wow. Back-to-back big weeks. Very impressive. Great start by you. All the credit to you. You get Devontae Adams back. I do now at this point wonder who you get out. I would have thought it would have been T. Higgins. I would have thought maybe Kyle Pitts. Now Kyle Pitts seems like the only option. Van Jefferson also an option, but it's just hard to justify continuing to play two tight ends between Pitts and Knox. I guess I could see you also bench Knox, but I mean, obviously weather had a lot to do with that. So El Captain, maybe a team that could have gotten themselves a bye, but it didn't end up happening. Team Glory Hole, we've already spoken about. I think this team is fantastic. Obviously, this week the team was weaker with Aaron Jones, Nick Chubb, DJ Moore, and Kareem Hunt all on bye. So we won't really recap this week because it was unimportant to you, and it will not signify what happens in the playoffs. Another matchup that wasn't super... Actually, let's stay on the same note here. Pain Train needed to win and put up at least decent points to secure the bye. They did that. 190 points, absolute smash spot, and fantastic week for you. Shout out to Herbert with a gigantic week. Shout out to God with a gigantic week. A little bit of concerns with that wide receiver depth, as we spoke about earlier. T.Y. Hilton, definitely not a guy you want to have to start, even though T.Y. Houston, you'd think he'd do well against Houston. Game script did not allow for that. Mooney, again, the Chicago offense, just a little bit too concerning. Javonte Williams performing like this is great news for you, but I'd have to imagine you go back to Amari Cooper next week to strengthen up this team and perform like the bye team that you are. Good on you for getting yourself that bye spot. The chairman, there wasn't much you were fighting for this week. It was really, there was a very outside chance at a bye, I guess, if you won, but you would have had to get a lot of points and a lot would have had to happen. So for you, we won't talk also too much about your team. The highlight here is that you had Josh Allen in bad weather. You had Zeke, who was banged up. Damon Harris got banged up. Diggs in bad weather. So not too much concern with your team. Actually, more so good news about Mike Williams, who now is going to be maybe featured with Keenan Allen having COVID. Bad to say good news about COVID, but that's fantasy-related good news for you. Damien Harris would have been on bye anyway, so the injury doesn't really impact you too much, so not much to talk about there. Now let's talk about the games that mattered a ton. First, Crucifier getting a win to hopefully put themselves in a playoff spot going into the week. Obviously, it didn't happen, but well played all around. really, I mean, obviously you could think about Devontae Freeman. He could have been a start there, but nothing really made the difference here. Your guys did great. Gage, a fantastic start. Goddard, a fantastic start. Then there were guys who you obviously are going to start who performed well anyway, being Lockett and Kupp. Again, we spoke about the two Seattle wide receivers being a detriment. This week, 30 points between the two. Pretty solid. So that didn't impact you this week. It did impact you throughout the season. So yeah, you did enough. So it really came down to TBD and Live in the Vita Yoda. And this is the matchup that everyone was talking about. Before the feature matchup, the primetime matchup. Let's quickly talk about the Plague and Sons of Chaos. Two teams that weren't fighting for too much. Sons of Chaos, if they won and TBD lost, there was a chance for a playoffs. Didn't happen, and they lost anyway. This would have been heartbreaking if it would have worked out where if they won, they would have made the playoffs because they only lost by 1 point. Fortunately for them, it didn't matter. Unfortunate, but kind of fortunate. This was the team I was down on earlier in the year because they relied too high on Tampa Bay. Funnily enough, that was the strongest part of their team throughout a lot of the season. Brady 36, Fournette 22, and our boy Gronk at 22. Weirdly enough, the guys that you'd think would perform didn't perform. Tyreek only 4 points, James Robinson only 2.5, and like a weird injured start. So this team misses the playoffs along with the Plague, who at least finishes on a high note. Two teams that are going down, unfortunately. So the premier matchup, it's time. TBD. Live in the Vita Yoda. The final score was 149 to 129. Looking at that team Live in the Vita Yoda, putting in their best foot forward. Just a lot of average performances. We had Hollywood at 10.5. We got Najee at 15.7, which for him is really average with the usage he gets. We had Cordarrelle at 12.6. Then some bad luck. Again, you're not devastated if your team Live in the Vita Yoda, but as far as the teams who are rooting for TBD to lose, Thielen gets hurt, only gets you 1 point, was kind of the main thing there. Renfro got a ton of volume, didn't get in the end zone, could have been a smash spot for him. Logan Thomas with an injury, and that's essentially what the difference was. 20-point difference. It was a winnable game. Unfortunately, couldn't come away with it. Doesn't impact you, but impacts the rest of the league because TBD puts up 150. Mahomes, another bad week. TBD, so dependent on Mahomes coming through. I think he will for you in the playoffs, but I've been saying that all season. Keenan Allen is the concern moving forward with COVID. Bateman, an unstartable player, only 1 target, no catches. So there's a lot of ups and downs with this team, but I'm focused more on the ups. I think Madison's going to have 1 more week to try to be your starting guy. I think Saquon's in a really good matchup against the Chargers next week. He could do well. Josh Jacobs trending well. I really think Mahomes and Kelsey are going to come for you. So I think this team could be very dangerous in the playoffs. You did just enough to make the playoffs. You owe a lot of that to Keenan, Josh Jacobs, and Deontay Johnson, and Madison. So you would like more consistency across the team, but you can make noise. It's not giving me the preview for the playoffs. We know Glory Hole and Pain Train are on bye. I'll make quick predictions here. El Captain is playing against TBD. El Captain with way more points throughout the regular season. I really think El Captain has the firepower to win this game, but it is up in the air. We would expect to see Devontae Adams back in this lineup. So assuming that's the case, again, who does he bench? That might be a decision that ends up costing you. We'll wait and see on that. I should say costing. It should make or break you. So I think this team is in a really good spot. I also think Lamar's due for a huge game after such a frustrating loss. I really think they're going to lean on that passing game heavily. For TBD going into the playoffs, it's the Mahomes-Kelsey show. It's really interesting. There's a story of 2 quarterbacks who are very inconsistent but have huge ceilings. My prediction is one of them breaks out, and that one is going to lead that team to victory. So we'll see. My prediction is El Capitan 152. Team TBD 146. Completely guessing that. I'm going to write it down, though, so that we remember in case I'm right. So 152, 146 is going to be the final there. TBD with the loss, unfortunately. Then we're going to talk about the 4-5 matchup. We have the chairman against Team Livin' La Vida Yoda. If you're the chairman, you know that you had a huge advantage throughout the season, over 100 more points than Livin' La Vida Yoda. You get Josh Allen and Diggs, hopefully in better weather, and I think they are hungry to get their points back. You're getting Zeke, hopefully, to be a little healthier, but he looks banged up. You lose Damian Harris, so your RB2 spot goes to Darrell Henderson, you would think, or A.J. Dillon. Probably both of them going to be playing. You are going to have to bench someone between them two and Gaskin. That might be another make-or-break decision. I think the Mike Williams upgrade is gigantic for you. He just came off a big game. The Keenan Allen being out could be huge for you. So I'm going to think that you're going to have a pretty good week. I'm expecting about 140-something points from you, whereas Team Living La Vida Yoda, without Thielen, it makes that wide receiver group even more vulnerable. I think that's going to be what costs you. Corey Davis is out for the year, so Eli Moore becomes very startable. Sony Michel also might make an argument to being in that lineup. And then Alvin Kamara, you'd hope is healthy. A lot depends on those ifs, ands, or buts, but at the end of the day, I don't think there's a team that's strong enough to compete against the chairman. I think the chairman wins this game 148 to 132. Let's see what happens. Who knows? Excited to talk about the playoffs. Excited to see what happens. Sorry to everyone who didn't make the playoffs. I'll be only talking about playoff matchups, of course, moving forward. So next week, we'll be talking about 2 games, and I wish the best of luck to you all. Goodbye.